In this video, we're going to discuss a separate window for editing MIDI. We've spent a lot of time discussing how to edit things within our MIDI tracks or within our instrument tracks. But there are several other windows that we can take advantage of as well. But before we do that, I want to explain the session so you know what's going on. Right now I have a loop file that I have imported in, and let's just play this back. And I have also created a stereo aux with an instrument placed on the insert. This particular instrument is called structure free. And what's really unique about this is what I did in my session was I took all the kicks and snares and the hi-hats and I did a capture. Remember that was Command R. And I captured my kicks and my snares and my hi-hat in my regions list. And then all I had to do is just simply drag and drop these right into this patch area within structure free. Now what this does is it simply allows me to create individual kicks, snares, and hi-hats within my session. Now in order to play these, we can use MIDI tracks. So what I've done is I've set these up on A1, A2, and A3. Now once this has been set up, you can see that in my MIDI tracks now I have my output set up to port A, channel 1, port A, channel 2, port A, channel 3. So this allows me to play my kick from a MIDI, play my snare, and also play my hi-hat. Now if I hold down the shift key, I can actually play all of them at the same time. So you can see that's a really cool way of being able to take a loop and actually slice it up and trigger it from samples within Pro Tools by using structure free. Now this is where we get into editing the individual MIDI tracks. If I play this back right now, we want to be able to edit this particular kick and snare and a hi-hat with a lot of ease. Well, sometimes it's very difficult to do that from individual tracks. So this is where the MIDI editor really comes in handy. If you go underneath the Windows menu, you can go in and pull up the MIDI editor. It's Control equals, and this looks very, very familiar to what your edit window will look like. In fact, you have all your standard tools, you have your standard modes, you even have your standard buttons that you're used to. You've got your grid, you've got your nudge, you have the ability to listen to the notes being played back while you're editing. You can choose the velocity that you're going to draw the notes in, and also choose the duration of the notes that's being drawn in as well. Now I can switch between any one of these tracks very quickly by simply going over here and clicking on this tracks list. So if I put my pencil tool on the snare, you can see that the snare shows up. If I put the pencil tool on the hi-hat, I can now see the hi-hat come up. So if I have these all hidden, I can option click and have just one or all of them shown. And this just gives me a lot more control in being able to see all MIDI information within one piano roll view instead of individual tracks. So you can see I can play the kick here, I can play the snare there, and so forth. Now all the standard tools and modes and everything still apply just like what we learned before. In fact, you typically want to work in your freehand pencil tool to be able to create your notes and pull them anywhere you want. Now to further explain this MIDI editor window, I need to explain these two icons. This top icon right here, when it is shown, it basically allows you to have your regions follow a track color. If this icon is turned off, they actually follow region colors. So there are some times when you have regions that have the same region color and you're not able to discern between the hi-hat and the kick. So a lot of times you're going to turn this on and it gives you much more contrast and differences of color between the individual tracks. You can see the colors here from the tracks list do coordinate with the actual MIDI. Now something that is lost in this particular view is that you cannot see velocity changes. So you don't see lighter notes or darker notes. If you want that, then you need to turn on the second icon right here. And now everything changes to the same color, but now you can see when I click on this and hold the command key, I can change the velocity, and it now is a lighter color than the others that have higher velocities. Now you can also choose to make your MIDI editor show your individual MIDI notes as a score. So you can actually work with your notes just like you can in Sibelius. Now I prefer to actually have you guys work in Sibelius. It does make a little bit more sense. But if you do plan on working with individual notation, you might find this very helpful. Otherwise, you can switch it back into a piano roll view and view all your individual data just like you would in your MIDI or instrument tracks in your edit window. Now, if you move down to the bottom left-hand corner of that track, you can see that we have a little arrow here, and this allows us to view individual automation. So we can say we want to view automation for velocity, we want to view automation for MIDI volume, and so forth. So this allows us to see all the information across all the tracks. So I can now draw the automation in for my snare and draw the automation for my kick to be different. So this gives you more control over automation being seen back to back instead of seeing it on separate tracks within your edit window. So again, the main advantage of the MIDI editor is that things get combined so you can see things more on top of each other and you can control things quicker. And you're going to find that this is very helpful if you're working with large sample libraries. Let's say you're working with an orchestra sample library where you have one particular patch of strings that's only called from this bank at this certain time. Well, you may find yourself switching between one track and another track just to switch between these different styles and feels of strings, when you could actually do this very quickly within your MIDI editor. So take advantage of this MIDI editor for combining multiple tracks to edit more efficiently.